to the Flatcar monthly community meeting. This is the third iteration that we are doing. This is the July iteration of the community meeting. So welcome everyone who joined this, and throughout this call we will be we will be having spotlight and going through the agenda would be going through the spotlight, which would be revolving around Flatcar releases, and then we would be covering the ARM updates, and then finally a new section that has been added, which is the Flatcar release planning. So we will be going through that step. Welcome everyone. Before moving ahead with the spotlight, let's go with a round of introduction. So I'll go ahead with mine. So hi, I am Sayan. I work with the Flatcar project, and I primarily look into the releases. Folks, you can probably take
I'll
turns.
go next. Hi, I'm Jeremy, and I joined Kinfolk/Microsoft 2 weeks ago, and I'm currently working on upgrading Docker in Flatcar. Okay, Marga?
Hi, I'm Marga. I used to be part of the Flatcar team. I'm currently doing other stuff, but I'm still interested in what's going on with Flatcar, so I keep attending these meetings. Kai.
I'm Kai. I work for Kinfolk since a bit more than 2 years, and I'm also part of the Flatcar team. And Danielle?
Hi, I'm Danielle. Been working at Kinfolk/Microsoft for a year now. I'm a program manager for support for Flatcar. William.
Sure, my name is William. I'm at Kinfolk Microsoft, focusing on the ARM stuff, but moving around. We'll see what happens. Is that everybody else from Kinfolk proper? Then on to the audience, or?
Yeah, we can go ahead and.
Hi, I am Aniruddha. I'm a second year undergrad from India, and I'm working on a bug on locksmith project.
Anyone else is left?
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm from UC Santa Cruz. We use Flatcar in our toil workflow management tool. And I'm here to find out about sort of what the future of the Flatcar init system is and what kind of configs we should be writing.
Welcome, Adam. And Ravish, would you like to go ahead with your introduction?
I think he just joined, so maybe he missed the introduction round.
Okay.
Just a second.
Ravish, are you there? Probably we can move ahead. I guess Ravish joined very recently, so yes, we can probably move ahead. So yeah, I'll hand off. So the first spotlight is around the Flatcar release process. So I'll hand over the spotlight to Kai, who would be taking us through the release process. So Kai, over to you.
Okay, so I will just make a general overview of what a Flatcar release involves and what the process is. And so as you know, Flatcar in general is different from other distributions that maybe have a release only like twice a year or even not that often. And with Flatcar, we do releases very often. And a release means we have everything baked into one image. And then the next release is a totally different image. And in between we have package updates, but you can't really jump from one package to the next. You have to take the full release. That's kind of good because it also allows us to test what we are shipping. Maybe next slide can give the overview of how this process is going. So we decide what goes into a release by looking into PRs that are ready, any changes that are prepared and maybe already merged to the development branch, or that we have to get in, like critical security fixes, for example. And of course, there are often general package updates. When a new version is available, then it gets also into this release. If somebody prepared this, update. And in the plan, we get an overview of what we kind of are waiting for to get the release ready. And when we are ready, we can start a build, and the build runs on Jenkins in our case, and compiles all software from scratch. And then there's a test suite running to see whether the resulting image is actually usable or not. And then, there could be some last minute changes are introducing unexpected errors, or that there are some other errors introduced some time ago, but we didn't spot this error yet until we have this final big test run on many clouds, as many clouds as possible. And if there's something wrong, we just start with a new build and another test run after fixing the problem. When the test is successful, we will sign and upload the release. And signing and uploading means that you, for example, can download the image, or you can find the image on a cloud provider, or that your instances can fetch the update payload from our public update server. And when that happens, we announce this and go live, of course. Means you have access to all these new image files or update payloads. Next slide. We try to do this release planning every 2 weeks to know, like, when, for example, we could do the next release, or we have to wait a bit because something is not yet ready, what we want to have in it, and so on. And so doing it every week is a bit too often, because we don't want to have too much overhead of release planning compared to actually doing the development work. What happens in this release planning? We review the pull requests that are pending, for example, and could be merged quickly, and decide whether we need certain fixes and updates that are not yet worked on. And if there's something ready to be merged, whether we kind of merge it now or wait a bit until the release, for example, is branched away from the development branch and then only merge it. So kind of a coordination in general of development. And we have this tracked on a release planning board in GitHub, in the GitHub project. And that's public. You can access it from today. And the main idea is, of course, to do this together as community and have your input for the release planning. So we do this as part of the community call that's today. And since we don't do the large community call every 14 days, we do a small separate meeting every 14 days. Okay. So a few words on the architecture of the build and release process. We have, for example, when a new major alpha version comes, that means we have a lot of package updates, while for smaller bug fix releases, we don't have big package updates. It's just small bug fixes to certain packages when they have a minor version update, for example. So with an alpha release, we also do a full SDK build. For example, there could be a new version of the compiler that's part of the SDK, or some kind of tooling that's also part of the SDK. And yeah, that's normally only needed when we have a new major alpha version. And the major alpha is also a good point of, for doing this, instead of letting, like, if you wait too long to do this SDK build, then the updates are accumulating, and it would be a bit annoying to have to download all the new packages when, for example, a compiler changes and so on. So that's something we decided. We want to do a SDK build only for new major alpha versions. And this SDK includes compiler for ARM and AMD 64. And from this SDK, there's a tool chains built, and this tool chain is also architecture specific. And toolchains means, for example, something like libc, that's a very basic package. And also the very first software that's going into the image. So these require a bit special treatment. So that's why they are split into a specific step. And then the rest, like more the normal packages that are compiled with this toolchains libraries together. And they are, of course, also architecture specific. For example, a normal binary package that's built could be systemd, or let's say Docker. And then we have all these software packages compiled, and we can assemble the base OS image from that. That's also architecture specific. We have then one base OS image for ARM and one for AMD 64. And all other images are actually just converted from the base OS. So we have the cloud specific images, for example, or the QEMU image that's using the special VM format that's more efficient. That's all just converted from the base OS. So for example, on the cloud images, we use this /usr share OEM partition, and there are additional services and so on that are specific for this cloud vendor and are not part of the regular base OS. And then, what else to say? We have this new alpha build, and what's happening from this alpha build, at some point it gets a beta, and that happens by making a new release from the branch. That branch is like specific to each major version, and you may know that the major version stays the same from alpha to beta to stable. So that's one Git branch, and we do the beta release from this Git branch then where originally the alpha release came from, but maybe there were some additional bug fix commits and so on. And that's like also happening for stable, and they are using the same SDK as the latest SDK for this major version. Okay. And we talked about tests last month, so maybe I will skip this. And when we have this image generated, it's signed by our private key, and then it's uploaded to our origin server, or like the stable.release server, and beta and alpha.release, where you can download the images. And then we do an additional signing process for the update payload, because we want to have more security for this update mechanism. So for example, when there would be some security incident where we find out, okay, all images that are published now, they are not trustworthy, then we could remove them. But for example, if somebody already updated the instance through this update payload, it would be a problem. and we couldn't really revoke this. So that's why we make the update payload more secure by having the signing process done in an air-gapped environment. And this public key is also baked into the /user partition, so that compared to downloading the image file from the server, you always have the signature checked for updates. While for downloading the image from the server, you need to check the signature yourself, depending on how you download the image. Yeah, and what else? Yeah, so images are on the HTTP server, and the update payloads are actually also there, but under a different subdomain. And they are announced through this update server, that's the Nebraska project. And yeah, so we can select in Nebraska that the new version is now there, and the instance can fetch it. And at the same time, we do the release notes announcement in, like on the website, for example, but also there's a RSS and JSON feed, and yeah, email list posts and Twitter normally. Next slide. And during the release dates, we have nightly builds every night, and sometimes also pull request builds. That's not yet automated, so that's why we don't have it for every pull request. Yeah, what means nightly build? We have some kind of developer profile, and in this developer profile, the build artifacts are not pushed to the same location as a regular build, so that's why it's more like a playground, and we can publish and upload a lot of images there, and there's no confusion about whether they are part of the regular release or not. So that's why they have a different URL in the, for example, in the SDK binary packages and so on. And with this nightly developer builds, you can, for example, test out the latest changes that are done. And you can also fetch your binary packages from there if you're having a local SDK. So these are kind of useful things coming out of nightly builds. And then the pull request builds are something that we start manually on Jenkins, where we currently need a branch in the CoreOS overlay or project stable or Flatcar scripts repository. And then with this particular branch, we are doing a build and can also run the tests, actually the same as done during a release, but normally it's more limited to not invoke too much cost on the different cloud providers. And yeah, the CI jobs are also stored in the Flatcar scripts repository under the Jenkins subfolder. And while we currently have to do this manually to start a new PR build, we plan to set up a proper PR CI pipeline so that, for example, you file a pull request and we directly build an image from that and run the tests, and then we could be more confident, for example, to merge it, or it also helps you to discover some problems with your pull requests that you didn't spot when doing it locally. Maybe we'll use Concourse for that, but that's not yet clear. And the plan is also to document how to run these scripts manually, for example, to build a release on your laptop instead of having to use Jenkins or something. Okay, next slide. I will hand over to William.
Danielle, did you want to say a word or two as well about this?
No, it's okay. I think this time I'll just give it to you.
Sure, no problem. All right, folks. So update on ARM64 status here. I'll keep this pretty quick. Can I get the next slide, please? All right, cool. So we've got a substantial number of failing tests still. Here I've segmented them into groups because many of the failures seem to arise from the exact same or similar root causes. In some cases, the exact same failure messages. The goal here is to start getting the wider community involved, starting with what are hopefully the less complex root causes. There was kind of an on-ramp there earlier, but it turned out that my intuition and understanding about the root cause was incorrect. So not yet, but soon. Could I get the next slide, please? All right, so another thing on my plate here, Polkit, if you're not familiar with it, it uses JavaScript as sort of its policy file engine. Upstream uses SpiderMonkey, which comes out of Firefox. And since that's their production JavaScript interpreter, it has some pretty serious dependencies. LLVM comes in for a just-in-time compiler. It requires some additional patches on top of upstream because apparently nobody's compiling it for ARM64 in the way we're compiling it. Adds a bunch of image build time, makes the image bigger, just a pain all around. But some other crews have decided they have the same problems with it that we do. And there is a third-party patch set adding duct tape, which is kind of, it's like Lua but JavaScript. It's a very small, very compact JavaScript interpreter for embedding in larger applications, pretty much exactly what Polkit's doing. So this is a PR that's on the free desktop GitLab, and we're investigating it to see if we can bring this in lieu of having to do these big SpiderMonkey builds. So that's that. And then, yeah, I'm the kind of the point contact for anything ARM64 related. I lurk in IRC and Matrix. My nickname is WRL. So if this is important for your use case, if you're stalled waiting for ARM64 to be stable in Flatcar, then I'm the one to bug. If you have some spare time and you're looking for something to do, as mentioned on the previous slide, I'm doing my best to divvy things up and start, yeah, getting community involvement on it. So feel free to poke me on IRC or Matrix. And that's all for me. So next slide.
Thanks, Kai and William. So for the next, so we'll be moving ahead with the next section, which is release planning. But before we move, dive into the GitHub board, I'll go through the state of the current release. So we did the last release on July 2nd of 2021, and we had a release for 2 branches, which is alpha and beta. And okay, so beta should have been a major release. I typed it wrong, but so we had so the alpha actually bumped to beta, so we have the new version as 2905.1.0, and alpha is a major release, which is 2920.0.0. Both of them includes patch level updates for Linux kernel and a couple of security fixes and package upgrades for like LZ4 curl and others. So if you're looking for those updates, do upgrade, and using alpha, do upgrade. And we were planning for a couple of more, like you might see the open PRs for glibc and IP tables. So those hit some hiccups at the very last moment, so we could not merge it, but then it got merged or are getting worked on after the release. Another thing that was added to beta was NVIDIA GPU support was added to the AWS Pro images. So that's the state of the release for the current release. Moving ahead. So we, as we told that we are introducing this, we are taking the release planning public. So you will see a planning board, and we encourage folks for to interact. Like if you have some, if you are tracking an issue or want something to be brought to limelight and to be fixed during the release, or have been working on some fix, so this is a good time to interact with the community and put it over for the releases. So the plan is that for every 2 weeks we would be doing one of these, like one would be club with the community call, and then there would be a shorter call every month after 2 weeks, which would be just the planning meeting. Okay, so I'll just stop sharing and share the planning board and then take it from there. I hope the screen is visible now.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the planning board, and so I'll just explain the basic layout that we have been using. So there's a planned section, there's a in progress board, there's a ready to review board, and then there's a ready to release uh, uh, not board, rather column. So we have ready to release columns for last 3 releases, and the plan is like just to track how changes are happening, we would be keeping this at max 3 to 4 iteration of the previous release, and then one iteration that would be coming ahead. And on the plan section, there is this to do where we particularly plan which all packages that needs an upgrade. So if you're looking into a package upgrade, feel free to chip in or if you're working on a particular package upgrade, do feel free to chip in. So you can probably see there are a couple of others from the previous releases, the planned ones. And as I told, like we will be keeping the we'll be keeping for the last few releases. So right now we have the planned ones for the last 3 releases, and after the next release we probably remove one. And then we have added a few of the issues that we are planning to work on. So earlier, as the release planning was private, so this we had a release we had a planning meeting just after the last release, and the team sat down and worked on this. But going forward, the whole planning would be happening on this call directly. So right now we have a couple of package requests, and on top of that, we are looking to work on the SSM agent, and that also includes looking into the increasing the OEM partition size. We have a couple of in progress issues. We have a PR from one of the community folks to add the telnet support. So we need to look into the review for that. Then there has been some work going on to for the Raspberry Pi fixes. I saw Jeremy updating the comment on that. So probably if you want to test, there's a PR for it. So probably if you want, you can go ahead and test that. And then there's an IP tables update which is in progress, and there are 2 fixes related to the system broken IPv6 networking. So these are the issues that we're primarily looking forward. And yeah, so another thing I would like to draw attention to is if you see every for the last 2 releases, you will see a note on top of the ready to release column, which essentially tells you the release version that we will be bumping to. So right now we are planning release across all the branches, and it would be a major release for most of them. So yeah, and then we have, as I told, there was a Gillipsy update that we could not push in the last one, so it got merged in the current one. So we are planning to push that in the next release. And then we had a libpcre update that is also coming. Yeah. So talking about the packages, we have been planning the systemd update, minor updates for systemd in all the branches as well as LTS, and then we have a few of the updates as in grub, rsync, afterburn, etc. And then we already have like a few of the PRs already created. So talking from now the next part, this I hope this is clear. Is there any questions you can probably ask in the ask directly, or you can probably drop in the chat? Okay, so I'll probably then move ahead. I guess there's no questions. If you have any questions, you can probably drop in the matrix channel. You can we have a matrix channel, and you can probably drop in there and ask your questions regarding the board. For the folks in the call, do you have any other issues that you would like to be included, or you have been working on that needs to be included in the release? The release date is 21st of July. So is there any issues or PRs that you would like to be taken care of during the next release? Okay, so I guess then we are kind of good with the release. And yeah, so I this is the current state. Feel free to like so after this we usually, like after the planning happens, we usually don't add more to the planned items, but yeah, so probably you can take a look at the moment, and if you have things, you can always drop to the next roll, which would be in next 2 weeks. Okay, so I'll then move to the I'll just stop sharing and move back to the slide, or wait, I can directly share it from here. The slides are visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I guess we are good with the release planning. You can probably I have posted the link on the chat, so you can look through it and drop questions that you have on our matrix channel. So yeah, so we welcome everyone. You probably got an idea of the release planning, and also, as William mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities to contribute to contribute to the whole ARM ecosystem in Flatcar. So do jump aboard, and also that we have if we have a matrix, we have a mailing list. So the matrix and IRC are bridged, so you can drop to pound Flatcar or on matrix, and you can go to the Flatcar repo. That's a point where you will find all the information regarding the contribution guidelines, the logs to the meeting, and as well as the recordings to the previous meetings, this meetings as well. So if you are new, you can probably look into those as well. And yeah, and also there are issues. We recently did a bug triage on Flatcar issues, and we got to tag a couple of them. And so if you're looking to contribute, it would have a good number of issues, so you can look into. So really looking forward for the contribution, and do join the next community call. Also remember, we do look out for the mail on the mailing list, and as well as matrix channels, as all the social media that we'll be doing the announcement for the next release planning call. So do do come down to the release planning call as well. Yes, so any questions or any things that you would like to discuss, anything that you have a question in your mind?
Yeah, I have a question directed at Adam, one of the participants. I was curious if you could tell us a bit more about what you do with Flatcar at UC Santa Cruz, you mentioned.
Toil system, which is a tool for running workflows, mostly for biologists and bioinformaticians. It'll run its own sort of workflows, and it'll run common workflow language workflows. And like it's meant to sort of run them on the cloud or on a local machine. So it can like run stuff on AWS. And we recently added for a while, it's had the ability to sort of make a cluster on AWS. We migrated that from Mesos to Kubernetes now. And as part of that, we're originally using CoreOS as our sort of host image that we deploy to run the Toil container and then the actual workflow containers on. And then we moved to Flatcar when CoreOS died. And like that's sort of why we're using Flatcar.
Cool. And are you missing anything? Like, is there something that would make your life easier if we worked on it, or?
Well, yeah, actually, that's why I came. We've been writing cloud configs to like spin up the nodes, and when we added Kubernetes, like we took a look at that system again because we had to modify the configs to like spin up Kubernetes instead of what we were using before, and we noticed that it seems like the cloud config format for Flatcar is not the right one. It seemed at the time that Ignition was sort of the new format that we should be using. So we went through, we changed our code to generate Ignition configs, and we're sort of ready to merge that, except now we're hitting the AWS user data size limit because the configs are bigger in the JSON format. And so we were looking into how you compress them, and we realized that there's sort of a split here because Flatcar will take Ignition version 2, which doesn't really support compression, whereas Ignition version 3, you can sort of chain to a config in a compressed URL, like a compressed data URL, and I think that'll let us make it smaller. But the V2 configs don't let you sort of compress the chaining. And I was digging through the Ignition source code, and it looks like it has automatic dgzipping, but only so that it can look at the config, determine if it's actually a cloud config, and reject it. You cannot gzip the JSON Ignition config. And so I was wondering, like, if we go and make some PRs against Kinvolk's Ignition, is that ever going to go anywhere? Because I noticed the 2.4 format has been experimental for the last 3 years. Or are you going to replace it all with like Red Hat's Ignition? Or is sort of the Ignition format not actually the format we should be using? Actually, the deprecation of the cloud config subset is maybe not as deprecated as it might have been. I saw some chatter on the mailing list to that effect, that maybe really cloud config is what people should use if it works for them. And so I'm sort of curious of, should we even be migrating? Should we be migrating to V2 or V3? Is there a plan here with regard to Ignition, or is it we're sort of not touching it until it breaks?
Yeah, so the plan is that we update to support version 3 and still keep version 2 compatibility. So that's what Upstream doesn't do. Upstream just supports version 3, so that's a bit unfortunate. And yeah, the best would be if we have a patch that allows us to support both versions at the same time. If that's not possible, then we probably have to drop version 2 at some point. But yeah, I mean, they are not too different and you could easily migrate. And about your question, there's some support for compressed data in Ignition version 2 also, but it's limited because you have to use base 64 again then to specify what text comes into this AWS user data. At least when I tried, I didn't really gain anything. Also, because some Kubernetes certificates are not really compressible. And what normally all people are doing is they host the ignition config in an S3 bucket. So that's what I would recommend you to not worry about this 16,000 byte limit, which is quite annoying.
That could work. We'd have to, that would require some architectural changes on our side, like the code that sort of provisions machines right now doesn't really need to interface with the storage layer of the cloud that we're working on. And if we change to do that, then we'd have to sort of postulate that whatever source we have for machines also has a storage system. But we could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's only for AWS, this limit mainly. And there's S3. If you have an AWS account, it's easy to also use S3.
Yeah, so when Ignition fetches the config from S3, it's authenticating as the machine with any IAM role that's been assigned to it.
Yeah, it's internally. So you can limit the accessibility of this file and the machine can still access it, yes.
Okay.
So there are some examples in the Flatcar Terraform examples repository, and otherwise, yeah, the Flatcar docs website should have the details and also the Ignition docs itself about like using this replace directive of fetching a new config from a other location and how to use the S3 URL format.
And is there any real benefit to moving off of cloud config to Ignition if cloud config works for us?
Yeah, it's a different thing. So cloud config is configuring the instance after it booted up, and Ignition is doing it shortly before the instance is booting up inside the initram file system. So that allows you to do different things. Otherwise, you would need another additional reboot, for example, with cloud config. And then cloud config is also running on every boot. That's sometimes causing unexpected problems. And Ignition only runs once on the first boot.
But if we have it working with cloud config, like at no point are we anticipating a release where Flatcar drops support for cloud config, but has not picked up support for Ignition v3.
Yeah, I think we will keep it around. This cloud config for support is custom to CoreOS and Flatcar. It's not the Ubuntu upstream cloud init stuff. So that's why it's not really evolving, but it's sticking around.
Okay. Thanks.
Any more questions we have? I see that the two folks who joined. So we missed Ravi's introduction. So Ravi Shankar, if you want to introduce quickly before we leave.
Hello, I'm Ravish, and I recently discovered a Flatcar, so I'm sort of exploring it, and that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravish. Orko Provo? Okay. So I guess that's all for the July community meetings. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you back in the Flatcar release planning meeting in 2 weeks. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.